Outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine. Further west, always more cloud, outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning. Pushing up towards western Scotland, we could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again. And that rain, as it moves across Scotland, will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into a Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west, double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day, things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast, more rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Good morning, everybody. You are watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Maroki. We're here all the way through until midday with a massive show for you with all the topics that you care about.
Yes, indeed. And make sure you get in touch, as usual, with your views, GBviews at gbnews.uk. And we will be getting to those throughout the programme. But first, it's time for the latest news.
I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. The self-isolation period for people who test positive for COVID-19 and who are fully vaccinated in England has been cut down from 10 days to 7. Those infected with the virus must produce a negative lateral flow result on day 6 and day 7 of their isolation period. The Health Secretary says the move will reduce disruption to people's lives and help thousands enjoy Christmas with their families. Well, it comes as the Prime Minister has ruled out the introduction of any new restrictions before Christmas Day, but says new measures could be brought in after. In Wales, workers could be fined £60 for going to their office under new coronavirus laws. The Welsh Government has announced that unnecessarily attending a workplace is now a criminal offence amid the spread of the Omicron variant. People in Wales are still allowed to visit pubs and restaurants, and there is no limit on household mixing. The Welsh Government is expected to brief the public later on any further potential measures. The UK economy has grown at a much slower pace than first thought between July and September of this year. The Office for National Statistics said the economy expanded by 1.1% in the third quarter, compared with an initial estimate of 1.3%. Experts expect the economy to further contract in December as new restrictions could be introduced. Researchers have published a blueprint for producing millions of new doses of a vaccine within 100 days. The aim is to reduce the timeline from when a new virus is identified to the mass production of a vaccine. The new method could enable clinical trials to start within 60 days. In Madagascar, a government minister said he swam for 12 hours after his helicopter crashed at sea during a rescue mission. Sergei Gell, who leads the National Gendarmerie, was with a team searching the northeast coast of the country after a cargo ship illegally carrying 138 passengers sank. At least 64 people have been killed, 24 people are missing, 50 survivors have been found. You are now up to date. I'll have more for you at 10 o'clock.
Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Maroki, and Patrick Christys, and we've got another show full of today's big stories, lots of discussion on the issues you care about. So here's what's on agenda.
Yes, indeed. Well, Britain gets a double COVID boost as the self-isolation period is cut to just 7 days, and Prime Minister Boris Johnson declares that Christmas is on, although he doesn't rule out restrictions just after Christmas. We'll be telling you all you need to know on the COVID latest.
Yes, and finally, some help for hospitality as Chancellor Rishi Sunak pledges an additional £1 billion in financial grant support for COVID-hit hospitality businesses. But some say the £6,000 grants being made available will not undo the damage already done. And we'll be discussing the Chancellor's announcements and what businesses can expect very shortly.
Yes, indeed. And a lawsuit has been filed against the British Coast Guard by a humanitarian group for allegedly failing to help a boat that capsized in the English Channel, killing 27 people. But where should the responsibility lie? That's what we'll be putting to our expert guest.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more across the programme here with you till midday, as always, and get in touch with your views, GBviews at gbnews.uk as well. But first, Patrick gives his views on the Coast Guard being held responsible for migrant deaths.
So the Coast Guard is facing a manslaughter lawsuit for allegedly failing to help the 27 people who died in the Channel when their dinghy sank. Specifically, actually, a lawsuit against Claire Hughes, who's director of Her Majesty's Coast Guards. This is absolute madness. The allegation is that they didn't respond to emergency calls made by people on that boat and that they are now responsible for their deaths. I've been deeply critical of our Coast Guard, the RNLI and indeed Border Force for, in my view, aiding and abetting illegal immigration. However, when a French charity called Utopia 56 pipes up and tries to prosecute members of our Coast Guard for manslaughter, I have to put my foot down. Let's have it right. The only reason that these people get into flimsy little boats and set sail for the UK is because they know that the Coast Guard will come and pick them up when they deliberately turn their motors off and call for help. And On this particular day that 27 people sadly died, I think it's fair to say the only reason they didn't receive help from the Coast Guard is because they were already busy dealing with other boats. In fact, a statement from our Coast Guard reads, "On the 24th of November, Her Majesty's Coast Guard received over 90 alerts from the English Channel area, including 999 emergency calls. Every call was answered, assessed and acted upon, including the deployment of search and rescue resources where appropriate. We always have and always will respond to anyone in distress, as we did that day." And then, of course, there's a small matter of the fact that this boat appears to have been in French waters anyway. What this lawsuit is nothing more than a cynical attempt by a migrant charity to try to ensure that this country's Coast Guard, Border Force and emergency services devote their entire energy towards ensuring that every single boat that leaves Calais is picked up and brought to the UK, so that the people on that boat can spend the rest of their lives here, in my opinion. Anyway, I think that, frankly, it's an attempt to make illegal immigration easier. If anything, I believe this charity may well be exploiting the deaths of 27 people, some of them women, some very young children, to further its own aims. And it completely ignores the main issue. The utter lunacy of trying to claim that our Coast Guard is responsible for the deaths of people in the Channel actually makes me quite angry. If they want to bring a lawsuit against people, why don't they bring a lawsuit against the people smugglers who are becoming millionaires off the back of facilitating people making a dangerous journey across one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world? Why don't they sue the manufacturers of the boat that sank? It was clearly faulty goods, wasn't it? Why don't they go after French police on the beaches who've been pictured waving these people through as they set sail? I'm very concerned about what happens now as a result of this lawsuit. Hopefully it's just thrown out and we never hear of it again. But if it isn't, what this could do is create a situation where our Coast Guard is now so petrified of any one of these migrant boats sinking and any one of these people dying that it devotes its entire energy towards that. That means that when someone gets into difficulty off the coast of Kent and they call the Coast Guard gets a call at the same time from a bunch of people in a dinghy, they will always go to those people in a dinghy. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't, I'm just saying that it would absolutely set their priorities, wouldn't it? I'm also very worried that the deaths of these migrants are going to be pinned on some poor bloke that we've never heard of who happened to be manning the phones on that day at the specific time this boat sank. That's normally how these things work, isn't it? I can see it now. Lawsuit gets filed, the Coast Guard launches an internal investigation. They find an individual who they can pin it on, and it becomes a criminal lawsuit against a single person, as opposed to, of course, the lawsuit against the Coast Guard as a whole, or indeed its top brass. Mark my words, if this looks like it'll go to court, I think that's what will happen. You can take that to the bank. And that's wrong. You cannot simultaneously have a situation whereby the Coast Guard is criticised for essentially being an Uber service for illegal immigrants, and at the same time be held negligent and responsible for their deaths when a dinghy sinks and people sadly die. Perhaps, instead of taking our Coast Guard to court and trying to turn some people into pseudo-murderers, this charity could devote its time, energy and resources into telling these people in Calais not to get into a shoddy boat and sail out into one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world in the middle of winter.
Yeah, so we will be discussing this very shortly with a guest, an expert guest on the issue of migration and getting his views. But I think it's a difficult one because I completely believe that the Coast Guard should always, in every case, and they do, respond to any, regardless of who it is. I don't care if it's a mass murderer, quite frankly. I don't want to live in a world where they get to pick and choose who it is they're rescuing. And they do an incredible job, I think, on that front. I think the issue comes with, apparently, the two survivors have accused the Coast Guard of basically every time they call the French Coast Guard, they'd say call the British Coast Guard. When they call the British Coast Guard, they say call the French. So it's this sort of being passed back and forth. And then that's why I think this charity is suing both the French and the British authorities.
Indeed. Well, loads of views are coming in already. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll go to those very, very shortly, but we will be back after a very short break. Stay tuned.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning. Now, as we've been discussing a bit this morning, a manslaughter lawsuit has been filed against the Chief of the British Coast Guard by a humanitarian group for alleging failing to help a boat that capsized in the English Channel and sadly killed 27 people. The lawsuit has been filed in Paris by the humanitarian group Utopia 56, and it accuses two French authorities of being involved as well.
Yes, well, lawyers for the French non-profit organisation claim that as the boat was sinking in French territorial waters on November the 24th, the refugees sought to contact British and French rescue services, who then tried to pass on responsibility to each other. Only 2 people of the 29 on board the vessel on November 24th survived, sadly, in what is believed to be the greatest loss of life from a single migrant crossing ever in the Channel. The youngest victim was just 7 years old.
Yes, well, let's talk to Alp Mehmet, the chairman of Migration Watch UK, which is an independent, non-political organisation. It researches migration flows and is very concerned about current levels of migration into the UK. Thank you for joining us this morning. I just wanted to first get your reaction to what the actual accusations that have been put to the French and British Coast Guards, which is that when these, according to these 2 surviving migrants who were trying to cross at the time, along with the 27 others who died, they were trying to contact each authority and they just kept getting passed on to the other authority. Do you think there's truth to that?
Well, first of all, can I say I agree with everything that Patrick said in his intro, and I agree with everything that you said, Mercy. So that aside, frankly, I see this as a totally absurd, vexatious lawsuit to bring. The humanitarian group, what about the humanitarian concerns for those that they are wrongly, absurdly accusing of having committed a crime? I really find it very difficult to understand how people who think they are helping those who are trying to get across the Channel, how they can possibly be helping them by bringing this sort of ridiculous lawsuit. I'd like to believe that our courts, were it brought before them, would regard it as vexatious, would dismiss it immediately. And I hope that that's what the French courts will do as well. Apart from which, all it does, frankly, is encourage the traffickers to really put people onto these flimsy boats in the knowledge that if anything goes wrong, they won't be blamed for it.
I worry, Al. I worry massively that our courts won't throw it out, frankly, because I think of the optics of the situation, and I'm very worried of the knock-on effects of this, as I alluded to earlier on, that frankly now, if this does go to court, for example, that our Coast Guard now becomes a single-issue entity. Its only purpose would have to be ferrying people across the channel, because they'd be so terrified of getting that wrong. What do you think about that?
Well, let's be charitable to our courts and think that they've got a little bit more sense than that. Legally, I don't see how a boat that was clearly in French waters, and that's, I think, obvious now from what the French said, apart from anything. But I also think that it's an indication of why it's so important that the French and the EU do more to address this issue at their end, rather than thinking that once they get to midway point in the channel, it becomes our problem. That is clearly wrong. And I hope that the French will stop politicking and playground posturing, frankly, in the way that the president of France has been engaging in. Stop that and start thinking seriously about how to stop the flow, which frankly is in their hands.
And let me just ask you about a related issue, something that's in the papers this morning, which we'll be discussing a bit later, but it's the fact that it now costs £430 million a year to provide housing and cash payments to people awaiting their asylum applications. The National Audit Office says by next year this could be actually over £500 million. And this has doubled actually over the last 3 years. At what point do the government say, hang on, the people who vote us in are not going to have this for any longer? We absolutely need to do something about this rising issue.
Very good question, Mercy. When is the government actually going to do something about it? In fact, it's more than £500,000, because we've learned recently that the government has actually spent an additional £330 million because of COVID. I suspect that the additional money has been the result of the numbers going up exponentially in the way that they have, closing in on 30,000, frankly, over 28,000 now. So my feeling is that it's going to continue going up. The numbers will continue going up because, frankly, it's easy to get into this country by getting into a dinghy, getting in and staying here. And as the numbers go up, the costs, not just of housing, but in other areas as well. For example, there's £39.63 per person per week given to individuals who are seeking asylum and are being housed. It's likely to rise to 80,000 people in housing and accommodation having arrived here by next spring. And this is a huge increase on the number that we were being told would happen only a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we all feel the pinch in this COVID world, don't we, and the cost of living goes up, and frankly, we're all skint now, I wonder how charitable people are going to continue to be as they see the costs going up for these people crossing the channel. Alp, thank you very much. Alp Mehmet there, of course, of Migration Watch UK. Now, keep all your thoughts coming in to us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're going to go to a short break, but stay tuned.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many, more cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic, delivering cloud outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine Further west, always more cloud outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning. Pushing up towards western Scotland, we could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again, and that rain as it moves across Scotland will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west. Double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast, more rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muraki. We're here all the way through until midday with a show full of all the things that you really care about.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We've been talking about migration a lot, that asylum, the Coast Guard being sort of filed a lawsuit against because of the deaths of migrants, and as well the numbers of migrants coming here and the figures, how much it costs basically.
Yeah,
so we'll be
a lot.
We'll be continuing to speak about that very shortly, but first let's give you the latest news.
I'm Rosie Wright. This is your news at 10 o'clock. The self-isolation period for people who are fully vaccinated in England has been cut down from 10 days to now 7. Those infected with the virus must produce a negative lateral flow result on day 6 and day 7 of their isolation period. The Health Secretary says the move will help thousands enjoy Christmas with their families. It comes as the Prime Minister has ruled out the introduction of any new restrictions before Christmas Day, but says new measures could be brought in after. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, John Ashworth, says businesses need clarity for what happens beyond the festive period.
because the British people have been sensible and they are showing leadership themselves, it does look like the infection rates have plateaued over the last couple of days. It's still a high level infection, of course. I think the issue now, though, is that everybody is anticipating that something will happen after Christmas. Indeed, that's the briefing from the government sources to newspapers. Briefings to newspapers isn't good enough. I think businesses who need to order stock for post-Christmas in the run up to New Year's Eve need clarity. We all need to know where we stand.
In Wales, workers could be fined £60 for going to their office under new coronavirus laws. The Welsh Government has announced that unnecessarily attending a workplace is now a criminal offence. People in Wales, though, are still allowed to visit pubs and restaurants, and there's no limit on household mixing. The Welsh Government is expected to give an update on potential further measures later. Independent businesses have criticised the £1 billion support package announced by the Treasury, saying it won't be enough to help them through a difficult period. The Chancellor announced one-off grants of up to £6,000 for firms in the hospitality and leisure sector. Dave Mountford is the co-founder of Forum of Pubs and Pub Landlord. He told us that many businesses might not survive the winter.
We have absolutely, in a space of 10 days, lost pretty much 50% of our trade. Voices aren't being heard, and we're not being listened to by government. We're not being represented correctly, and consequently I've yet to meet or speak to anybody in the last sort of 12 hours who has welcomed this as being anything other than a real drop in the ocean.
The UK's chief medical officers have praised NHS staff for their essential and tireless work during the pandemic. They're also warning, though, of tough winter months ahead. They're urging staff to prepare for multiple challenges as hospital admissions with the Omicron variant are rising rapidly. The chief executive of King's College Hospital in London is also concerned at the number of COVID-related staff shortages.
We were at around about 100 or so COVID-related staff absences about 10, 11 days ago, and that figure is now over 600. Staff are coping, partly because they know they have to cope. They're professionals, they're clinical professionals, they're outstanding people, and they're doing what they have been trained to do, but it's difficult.
Israel will become the first country in the world to administer a fourth COVID-19 jab to the over 60s. The move comes amid concern about the spread of the new Omicron variant, with the first confirmed death in Israel this week. Although the decision is pending formal approval by senior health officials, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett already urged Israelis to get the dose as soon as possible. The UK economy has grown at a much slower pace than first thought between July and September. The Office for National Statistics said the economy expanded by 1.1% in the third quarter of this year, compared with an initial estimate of 1.3%. Experts expect the economy to further contract in December as new COVID restrictions could be introduced. Adverts by Arsenal that promote the sale of fan tokens have been banned for taking advantage of consumers' inexperience in crypto assets. It's a token scheme that would allow fans the chance to vote in decisions made at the club. Well, the ads warned that consumers could lose some money and to seek financial advice. But the Advertising Standards Authority found that Arsenal trivialised investment in crypto assets. The club said it would seek an independent review. A government minister in Madagascar has said he swam for 12 hours after his helicopter crashed at sea during a rescue mission. Sergei Gele, who leads the National Gendarmerie, was with a team searching the northeast coast of the country after a cargo ship illegally carrying 138 passengers sank. At least 64 people have been killed and 24 people are missing. 50 survivors have been found. You are up to date. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. For now, back to the point.
Morning everyone, you're watching To The Point on GB News with Patrick Christie's and Mercy Muroki. We're here with you all the way through until 12 o'clock with loads to get stuck into, so here's what's coming up.
Yes, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak has granted £1 billion of support grant relief for the hospitality sector as rising COVID cases have caused the industry to stall, but many businesses are saying the £6,000 on offer simply won't do. We'll discuss the package of support announced by the Chancellor very shortly.
Yes, and as Christmas is just around the corner, we'll be talking about the strangest donations to charity shops, including, apparently, a used toilet brush and a slice of pizza. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't turn that down. The pizza, not the toilet brush.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. And yesterday, the man accused of murdering Sir David Amess entered 2 not guilty pleas with an increased terror threat level. We'll be speaking to our expert guest about the role of social isolation in driving people to radicalisation.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. Get in touch, as loads of you have been, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on the growing cost of supporting our asylum seekers.
Figures reported in The Times this morning reveal that the cost of supporting asylum seekers has doubled in the last 3 years. It now costs £430 million a year to provide housing and cash payments to individuals waiting for their asylum applications to be processed. To be fair, in context, that isn't a huge figure relative to other things the government splashes out on. In fact, it's about £10 a year for every person of working age in the country. But the asylum figures are very concerning on many fronts, and here are just a few statistics. As of June this year, the total number of asylum claims that were classed as a work in progress was 125,000, according to the latest Home Office figures. The caseload of asylum claims being handled at the moment by the Home Office has doubled in size since 2014, and this is partly driven by the fact applicants are waiting longer for outcomes and the fact the number of people subject to removal is growing fast. Having said that, the number of annual asylum applications has actually been considerably lower in this decade than previously. Applications peaked at over 84,000 in 2002, and this is compared to around 35,000 in 2019 and just under 30,000 last year. It's also worth noting that the proportion of asylum claims which are refused has been shrinking over time, meaning a growing percentage of claims are accepted. For example, in 2004, only 15% of asylum applications were successful. In 2019, 48% of applicants were granted asylum. 48%. Those are the top-line figures on the state of asylum claims in the country. And these are figures that are only set to rise. The National Audit Office estimates that given current estimates for next year, the cost of housing and giving cash payments to asylum seekers could rise to over £500 million. And that's excluding the extra cost of keeping people in temporary hotels, a very expensive thing indeed. What an absolute mess this whole situation is. I think there are many people who'll be waking up this morning looking at these figures and it's just not sitting right with them, and many others who will be livid. Of course, there are also some people who want us to shut our doors completely to asylum seekers, and I don't hold that view. I don't think that's the British way. We've never been the kind of nation that just shuts our doors when people need help, and I feel that we should continue being a place of refuge for those that genuinely need it. But I also feel that unless the government are seen to be keeping these figures under control, the impact this will have will be incredibly damaging to society and for public opinion. They can't seem to keep levels of dangerous illegal crossings under control. They can't seem to actually remove those who are denied asylum and have no right to be here. Asylum processing times are taking longer than ever. There have been a catalogue of failings and embarrassments when it comes to housing conditions for asylum seekers. And the rapid rise in spending on asylum support over the last few years is just really not a good look, to put it mildly. I'm not actually sure what the government has got right on this issue. The charity of the British people will start wearing thin very soon, and the government need to get a grip, and fast.
Yeah, I think that's a sad fact, really, which is that actually I think the charity of the British people does have a limit, and rightly so, by the way, especially in the times that we're in at the moment. People are feeling the pinch, aren't they? People are seeing their bank balances going down, the cost of living going up, everything seemingly going up. And when it looks as though we've got money for, to an extreme level, actually, for these asylum claims, etc., people will start to ask whether or not charity starts.
And the thing is, I think the government can't not process asylum claims. They have to process asylum claims when people claim for asylum. More people, well, not necessarily more people, but over the last couple of years, more people crossing the channel are inevitably claiming asylum. It's 3 times what it was this time last year. that's out of their control to some extent, insofar as they still have to, support those people, etc. And so it is a difficult one, but I think you have to sort of address that their only solution is to address the problem where it begins, which is the moment people are smuggled onto these boats. And of course, that's not how everybody who claims asylum arrives in the country, but that's a massive part of it. And as we've been talking about this morning, it's something that's literally putting people's lives at risk, and people have sadly died as a result only recently. But I just think, look, the charity of the British people, it's not unlimited, and it's going to be a sad thing if people start sort of having more negative attitudes towards helping asylum seekers as a result of the government's incompetence in getting a grip on the issue.
That's it. It could create, actually, quite a bad situation, couldn't it? It could create hostility, it could create division, as opposed to actually maybe if they got the problem sorted. I mean, I think there's a lot of very stark things happening, aren't there, at the moment? We do have an issue with homelessness in this country. We do have an issue, as I've spoken about, with homeless veterans, for example, etc. And I think when people see the way that we are treating, and we should be kind to people, don't get me wrong at all, but see the way that we're treating certain people as opposed to maybe people who've fought for this country, for example, I think there's a bit of a contrast there, isn't there?
Yes, indeed. But apparently you can get housed if you're homeless now for getting a jab, I heard.
Is it?
I heard that. We'll talk about that later.
Jabs for houses?
Yeah, basically, for homeless people.
Wow.
But anyway... we're going to talk about the restrictions that Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced or not announced, because he said there will be no new COVID restrictions in England before Christmas this year, but he didn't rule out the possibility of introducing them later.
Yes,
Actually, we can't rule out any further measures after Christmas, and we're going to keep a constant eye on the data. But in view of the continuing uncertainty about several things, severity of Omicron, uncertainty about the hospitalisation rate or the impact of the vaccine rollout and the boosters, we don't think today that there is enough evidence to justify any tougher measures before Christmas.
Yes, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the new year, of course, won't we? But apparently, meanwhile, in Scotland, they will implement tough new measures for social events and sport matches from Boxing Day, cancelling Hogmanay celebrations for the new year. Well, today, First Minister Mark Drakeford, in Wales, presumably that is, announced plans for COVID rules after Christmas in Wales. Yes, that's right. With Stormont ministers will meet later to consider new COVID restrictions in Northern Ireland, a UK-wide package of misery.
Yes, and do you know what? I think yesterday we spoke about lack of clarity on the Prime Minister, and I think he's given some there, hasn't he? To be fair to him, he said, look, we don't think that currently the evidence we have justifies bringing in restrictions now for Christmas, but we'll review them later. I think that's a perfectly plausible, reasonable thing to say.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'm deeply fearful of what happens when the clock ticks midnight in
that's
January
the thing,
1st,
isn't it?
But,
that's the thing.
We are where we are, as they say. But anyway.
Now, yes, sticking on restrictions and the damage they've done, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has pledged £1 billion for businesses to bail them out for the hardest hit businesses. For the government's stealth lockdown, that's what some are calling it, although the Prime Minister insisted there would be no new restrictions before Christmas, his previous urge for caution and reduced social mixing has obviously cost many businesses valuable Christmas trade.
Yes, well, the Chancellor announced grants of up to £6,000 per premises for hospitality and tourist venues who've been left devastated after a wave of cancellations and no-shows due to COVID concerns. Well, that new pot of funding for pubs is being described as a lifeline for landlords experiencing a huge drop in footfall ahead of Christmas. I personally don't see how that can be, given that some of them have lost £100,000 already. But anyway, Kate Nichols is the CEO of UK Hospitality, and she joins us now. Thank you very much. What do you make of this £6,000 per premises?
Well, I think taken as a whole, the package of support announced yesterday, not just for the premises, but also those vital businesses in our supply chain and those businesses that have been excluded previously from grants, such as event caterers, wedding caterers and office catering. It's a helpful short-term package of emergency cash support to take account of the situation that we're facing and the loss of trade that we've had. It is that emergency boost. So it will provide some immediate cash to get people through what will be a very tight period in the next couple of weeks, where revenues are down 40 to 60% and bills keep coming in. But clearly it's not going to compensate for the loss of all of that trade, and it remains a big challenge for businesses to get through what remains an uncertain situation.
Just if you could give us an idea of what the damage there has been to hospitality so far, how many have closed, as we know, in the pandemic, and do you expect that figure to start actually going up quite rapidly now, given this Omicron variant and the potential for lockdowns perhaps in the new year?
I think, hospitality was hit first, hit hardest and hit longest in the COVID pandemic. We've had 22 months of very uncertain trading. About 10 months of those we were fully closed in England, longer in Wales and Scotland, without revenues coming in, heavily restricted during the rest of the time, and back now with losing our most valuable and profitable month of trading, December, which is critical to get us through the next 2 to 3 months. So we have been hit very hard. Unfortunately, during the peak of the COVID pandemic between March 2020 and July 2021, we sadly lost 10,000 businesses. That's 1 in 10 of the hospitality estate. So it has had a heavy toll, 660,000 job losses as well. And many of those businesses now facing very challenging times with limited cash reserves. However much we've been able to make while we've been open, about 1 in 3 businesses in hospitality have less than a month's cash reserves to get them through. So these businesses are fragile. Their resilience is paper thin, and we really need to make sure that they have further support given the hit that this will have to their recovery period and the challenges of further restrictions.
This is an absolute massacre, isn't it? Because, we've had obviously the restrictions imposed in the last couple of years or whatever. We've got this now, which is a lockdown by stealth. So although the government has not officially told people to stay at home, in my opinion, that's why they can get away with only offering £6,000 per premises, because technically they've not actually shut anything yet, but they're about to by the looks of it. So in January we're expecting probably another form of lockdown. There's a double whammy. I mean, how on earth are these places going to survive?
Well, it is going to be challenging. I mean, the lockdown grants that the Chancellor announced yesterday are an immediate emergency cash support to get businesses through. We very much hope that the Omicron news is positive and we can keep those restrictions to a minimum so that we don't have to go back into lockdown. And let's be clear, some of the measures being talked about post-New Year, outdoor only, 8 p.m. curfews would close hospitality. That is a lockdown in all but name for hospitality. The cash grants of £6,000 are equivalent to the amount of money that was offered when we were fully closed. But it's clear that post-Christmas, if we do go into further restrictions, if we do see this crisis in hospitality lasting longer, we will need to have more support to get over that immediate set of restrictions, but more importantly, to secure our recovery. You can see in today's ONS growth figures from the economy doesn't grow unless hospitality is there, open and driving growth. It might have been anemic in July to September, but it was all driven by hospitality. There's no economic recovery in the UK unless hospitality recovers, and that's why we need to make sure these businesses continue to have support.
Well, Kate Nichols, thank you for joining us this morning to discuss that, CEO of UK Hospitality there.
Yes, indeed. We're going to delve into my inbox now, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Lots of you getting in touch to what we initially kind of hooked the show on, really, which is this apparent court case against the Coast Guard, in particular the top brass of it, for manslaughter, basically, essentially, over the death of the 27 migrants in the Channel. A lot of people saying that this is absolute madness, really. People saying this case should be blown out of the water. What do we want to do? We can't blame the Coast Guard for unfortunate deaths, rather than the real villains, the people traffickers, and that's from Paul, and that's, in my opinion, probably spot on, really, Paul. And also in relation to what you were talking about as well, Mercy, about the cost now of our asylum. Everyone I speak to are worried of the impact that this cost is having on our country. Are we going to let a small town keep coming here illegally? That's in reference to the number of people coming. Every hard-working taxpayer is paying for these, and that is from Colin, I believe. That's Colin's views.
Yes, well, do keep your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But after the break, we'll be talking to terror expert Dr. Rakib Ehsan about the impact lockdown has had on radicalisation, the social isolation some people are feeling, how this might be contributing to radicalisation. The UK's terror threat level, of course, reached severe last month after 2 attacks in just 4 weeks, so we'll be getting stuck into that. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there. Well, a change is on the way for the weather across the UK over the next few days. Starting today with some rain moving in from the west, potentially bringing some ice or snow to parts of Scotland. Still quite a cold feel for most of us as the cold air associated with this area of high pressure hangs on for one more day, but waiting in the wings are these weather fronts, and they'll be introducing milder air from the west and setting up a more changeable pattern into the Christmas period. So we've got rain coming in across parts of Wales, Northern Ireland, pushing up into Scotland, and as it encounters the cold air from what was a very cold night last night, chance for a few hours of freezing rain potentially across parts of southern and central Scotland, so an ice risk here for a time this afternoon. Elsewhere, though, the rain not amounting to much in the south, and it will be a cold day across eastern England as well as northern and eastern Scotland. A bit milder, though, for the far southwest. And then the rain continues to push its way further north through Wednesday evening. It's been quite a wet night across parts of Scotland, with potential for quite a bit of snow across the mountains north of the central belt. Ice risk continuing here. Elsewhere, though, rainfall not amounting to too much. Some clear spells for eastern England, and after a chilly start to the night, well, as we continue to feed in milder air, well, those temperatures will recover. So a very different start to Thursday morning compared to what we saw this morning. A lot of cloud around, perhaps some early brightness across eastern England. Otherwise, though, we're talking about a day of bands of rain coming in from the west, and with some dry interludes mixed in between. The rain again across the south, not amounting to too much. The most prolific areas of rain will be parts of northern England, Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland. And again, for the mountains of Scotland, well, there could be quite a bit of snow. So still cold across the north, but a much milder day for the southwest. Temperatures here comfortably into double figures. And it stays quite wet across the north of the UK, particularly parts of Scotland with some further rain and quite persistent hill snow for mountains north of the central belt, something just to bear in mind there. Elsewhere, though, some dry, clearer weather coming through later in the evening. And it's a much more unsettled picture as we move through the Christmas period, with rain for most of us, potentially a bit of snow in the north where it stays cold, but on the whole milder further south. Take care.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Morning everyone, welcome back. Now, the UK's terror threat level was raised to severe in November after 2 attacks over the course of a month. One, of course, was the murder of Sir David Amess, the MP, and the second was the bomb outside of Liverpool Women's Hospital.
Yes, well, yesterday, the man accused of murdering Sir David Amess on the 15th of October this year appeared in court for the first time. Ali Harbi Ali entered 2 pleas of not guilty, and his trial is set to begin on the 21st of March 2020. And of course, on GB News, we'll be bringing you those developments when that happens.
Yes, well, today we're asking what effect lockdown and isolation may be having on people's likelihood of being radicalised, especially online. And we are joined by Dr. Rakib San, and an expert in terrorism, radicalisation, research fellow, of course, at the Henry Jackson Society of Foreign Policy and National Security think tank. Thank you very much, Rakib, for joining us. Look, I mean, it is a massive concern, isn't it? If you lock people away with only their laptops or computers for company, it could be quite easy for them to become radicalised, couldn't it?
Oh, no, absolutely. I think that was always the risk with lockdowns, that you'd have those increased periods of boredom under social isolation. And then people would, there's a potential there that young people who may have been socially isolated even before the pandemic, with that situation intensifying, that they could potentially enter dark territories on the internet. And I think that's a real problem from a counterterrorism perspective. Because if you have people who are becoming radicalized on the online space through digital extremist communities, loosely organized hubs online of individuals, that could be a very serious problem from a counterterrorism perspective, because it's more difficult to monitor that when compared to when people are involved with, you could say, real life terrorist organizations, which are more structured, which helps that bit more from a monitoring perspective.
Yeah, and has there been any evidence or any research conducted that you know of so far about what has been happening to radicalisation and to extremism during this period of lockdown? Well, and during the pandemic, I should say, more broadly.
Sure. So, Mercy, we know that a number of European security services, we saw a recent terrorist attack in Kongsberg in Norway, and the security services there said that they were very concerned by the threat of online radicalization, and that this would potentially intensify the risk of low-tech, lone wolf terrorist attacks, and they are very difficult to predict. And they're also they are very difficult to protect against, because these attacks can be carried out in a relatively short period of time with very little logistical preparation required. So I think that moving forwards, if we are going down this policy, that if we were to have another pandemic, hopefully that isn't the case, that we have to really see what are the risks associated with lockdown. And we also have to see that when public authorities are working with young people who are radicalization risks, how effective can that work be done on a virtual basis when compared to interacting with them through face-to-face communication? So for those who work in counter-extremism and counter-terrorism, there's a lot to think about in terms of the potential drawbacks of lockdowns when it comes to providing public safety.
What are some of the key triggers that lead people towards radicalisation? Is it general dissatisfaction with this country? What is it?
Oh, Patrick, it could be all sorts of things, a myriad of social, political and cultural factors that can feed into radicalisation processes. The social isolation is one, when you're looking at the threat of online radicalisation, but there has to be an understanding from a social cohesion perspective that if you have almost counter societies developing within Western societies such as ours, that you see the development of radical ideologies which may be fundamentally anti-British in nature. If you have a lack of social cohesion, people interacting and not having the opportunity to build positive ties with those of a different ethnic or religious background, then that is fertile ground for extremists to peddle divisive narratives.
Yes, indeed. Well, Dr. Rakib, thanks for joining us again. It's always a pleasure to have you to discuss that very important issue. Well, coming up, we'll be live in a pub in Nottingham discussing about the Chancellor's package of bailouts. But first, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning. Let's get you up to date. The self-isolation period for people who test positive for COVID-19 and who are fully vaccinated in England has been cut down from 10 days to 7. Those infected with the virus must produce a negative lateral flow result on day 6 and day 7 of their isolation. The Health Secretary says the move will help thousands enjoy Christmas with their families. In Wales, new coronavirus laws mean going into the workplace unnecessarily will be a criminal offence and employees could be fined £60. However, people are still allowed to visit pubs and restaurants and there's no limit on household mixing. The Welsh Government is expected to brief the public later on any potential further measures. The UK economy has grown at a much slower pace than first thought between July and September. The Office for National Statistics said the economy expanded by 1.1% in the third quarter of this year, compared with an initial estimate of 1.3%. Experts expect the economy to further contract in December as new restrictions could be introduced. A government minister in Madagascar has said he swam for 12 hours after his helicopter crashed at sea during a rescue mission. Sergei Gele, who leads the National Gendarmerie, was with a team searching the northeast coast of the country after a cargo ship illegally carrying 138 passengers sank. At least 64 people have been killed, 24 people are missing. 50 survivors have been found. You are up to date. I'll have more for you at 11 o'clock.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Right, well, we're just going to get stuck in to the hospitality bailouts. Apparently, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has pledged a £1 billion worth of grants for the hospitality businesses hardest hit by COVID this festive period. A lot of you have been emailing in, actually, about this, gbviews@gbnews.uk, saying that it is not a lockdown by stealth. People have the free choice to go out. I suppose it's a question of whether or not that free choice has been impacted by fear, but anyway.
Yes, well, although the Prime Minister did insist that there would be no new restrictions before Christmas, the impact, of course, of the latest wave of coronavirus has cost many businesses valuable Christmas trade. But the Chancellor did announce grants of up to £6,000 per premises for hospitality and tourist venues who have been left devastated after the latest wave of cancellations and no-shows due to COVID.
Yes, indeed. He also pledged an extra £30 million for the Cultural Recovery Fund to support institutions like theatres and museums and, of course, a sick pay rebate scheme for small and medium-sized businesses. Well, that new pot of funding for pubs is being described as a lifeline by some landlords experiencing a huge drop in footfall ahead of Christmas.
Yes, well, our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, joins us live from Lamley, Nottinghamshire.
Hi. To the pub.
Yeah, yes, he has indeed. Will, just give us an overview of what the Chancellor has announced and what the industry's response has been to this new package of measures.
Good morning. Yes, I'm reporting live from Lamley in Nottinghamshire, a small village just a couple of miles out of the city centre of Nottingham, and my mask is falling down straight away. We're trying to follow the guidelines as much as we can, but sometimes it is a bit of a difficult one for a reporter. I'm joined by David Danby, who's the landlord of the Robin Hood Inn here in Lamley. Just to go back to that package of support that we're seeing from the Chancellor Rishi Sunak that was announced yesterday. So a $1 billion fund and a large proportion of that is going to be going to people like David, landlords. They're eligible for £6,000, up to £6,000 that they can claim from their local authority. That's going to help get them through this difficult period. The industry has been asking for clearer guidance on things like funding over this particular period since we saw the introduction of new measures. So, David, £6,000, it sounds like a lot of money for the average Joe. Is that a lot of money for you and for your business?
Yes and no. Obviously, because of the uncertainty over Christmas, we've sort of lost a lot of trade and cancellations. There's a big pot of money that we would have had if it had all been normal at Christmas, which obviously now we've got down. So that £6,000, when you put everything on top of it, which you've obviously got your staffing extra and all the rest of it, up to £6,000, as you said, that then can actually become and reduce down to maybe £2,000. So when you sort of look at that, and then that just really fills the hole that you've missed over Christmas that we should have had. So yes, it's good that we've got that support in that, but it's still not enough. It's still not the amount of what I'm going to be losing over running up to this Christmas period and Christmas itself.
It's filling a hole, but it is a very big hole. We know that landlords like yourself and the pub industry makes most of its money during December and the lead up to Christmas through things like parties, people getting together, even if it's just at a local village pub. Just describe for me, how bad has it been for the last few weeks for you?
Since the actual new cases of COVID has been rising, it has hit a lot dramatically. A lot of our customers, some have chosen not to come out as regular as they do. Obviously, some have chosen to look at doing their own restrictions. We've had cancellations on parties, and I say this respectfully, on some of the elderly parties that we've got, people that meet up. They've chosen not to bother doing that. On Christmas Day, we've had a few families that were coming to us for Christmas meals who have decided, because they're coming from different areas, they've cancelled on us. So we have felt it already, and we know it's quieter, and the trend is people are not also staying out as late as they used to do. They seem to be sort of having a few drinks, maybe sort of tea time into late evening, and then going home. And it's been that sort of trend from about sort of September sort of time. We've noticed this has been going on, and I think we need to try and break that cycle if we can.
And it's a drop in footfall. You have had the reassurance recently from the Prime Minister saying that there won't be any new restrictions before Christmas. It'd be very hard for him to do that with just a couple of days. But how do you feel going into the next period, Boxing Day and then the New Year?
Yeah, again, great uncertainty. We need to know as an industry, we need to know now. It's not a case of, it's great that it's not doing anything before Christmas, but we need to prepare and to find out what's going on straight after. Year? Is it going to be Boxing Day and suddenly he's going to turn around, for example, and say, right, on the New Year's celebrations, we're going to put a curfew on to stop people from mass at the pub late on. That's got its own implications. I know it has, because people may just come out earlier, but I suppose that's just one of the things that I'm uncertainty of. I don't know. Is he going to cancel all straight away and say that it's just not going to go ahead? But that's the thing that we sort of need to know. And also we need to know, going on and beyond the New Year, what's going to go happen after that? Are we going to get a lockdown? Is he going to go, right, OK, now we've got all the Christmas period and all out the way, are we going to have a lockdown for 2 weeks? Again, it's these questions, not just my industry, not just the pub industry, but obviously of shops and everything needs to know, and he needs to give us these answers now.
Sure, and of course, the measures that are announced today, announced yesterday by Rishi Sunak, don't just apply to hospitality. You can also get the Cultural Recovery Fund for theatres and for art galleries, as well as there's some support for sick pay if businesses like this do need to pay for it.
Will, thank you very much. Will Hollis there, live from a pub. And also, can I just congratulate the gentleman there on, I think, the world's finest beard, actually, that I've ever seen. So congratulations, well done. Right, OK, that's the hospitality bailout. I'm going to go into my inbox now, GBViews at GBnews.
Can you grow a beard? No.
You know I can't grow a beard, and you've just shown me up on national television. I'll tell you what, the bit I can grow is the bits that nobody wants. I can grow, don't know what I'm talking about now. I can grow, like, the sideburns and then a tuft. So I think even members of the Hells Angels would turn their nose up at that. A little bit of moustache every now and again. Yeah, you know, like the Movember thing. You just wouldn't really be able to tell. People who want their money back. Anyway, right. Views. Joanne's been in touch. Thank you very much, Joanne. It's not locked down by stealth. They're open. And despite what you say, people are going out. I've been out twice for Christmas lunch this week, and both places were busy. If it was a lockdown, they wouldn't have that money.
I'm not sure that's the experience a lot of people are seeing. A lot of people are saying that it's much emptier than it should be, basically, at this time of year.
Look, I've got to be honest with you, John, that's my experience. I mean, on Saturday I was there, and it was absolutely empty in the pub that I was in, although the service was great. But I suppose it depends where you are. And it's good. It's a good thing, though. It's a good thing if where you are is busy. That's what we want, surely. And then the flip side to it is absolutely a lockdown by stealth. This is according to Steve. Yes, very little is being done about it. Raising a question here, and I thought, as we were chatting about it before, weren't we, about £6,000 is not a lot of money for these places. You'd take that in a day, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not, is it? But I suppose it's £1 billion, isn't it? And so when you stretch that out over I think 200,000 or something are eligible, it's not going to be a lot, is it? But it's better than nothing. That's the silver lining, I suppose. And of course, there's that sick pay, isn't there?
Yes.
So that will help as well.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Certainly better than nothing. Well, look, thank you very much, everyone. Keep your views coming in. Loads of reaction as well. We didn't have time to go to them there, but I will later on, about what's going on in terms of our Coast Guard, or the top brass of it anyway. Essentially facing a lawsuit for manslaughter after the 27 migrants died in the Channel. What are your views on that? Keep them coming in. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, so now moving on, the Duxford Imperial War Museum has assembled the largest collection of Supermarine Spitfire aircraft under one roof. A total of 12 aircraft will be on display, including some of the first Spitfires to see combat.
Our East of England reporter, Amelia Harper, is at the Duxford Aerodrome for us. Amelia, thank you very much. What's going on?
Well, I don't know if you can hear, but pretty much just as we've come up on air, we are here obviously at the Imperial War Museum here at Duxford, but just outside of this hangar here, it is a working airfield. Luckily, it's just died down just in time for me to tell you about this absolutely, well, not just this one, 12 Supermarine Spitfires are going to be gathered here as part of this collection. As I look around, it's just, these are pieces of history. It's absolutely amazing. So this is the largest collection of airworthy Supermarine Spitfires ever to be assembled under one roof at one time. Over 20,000 of these amazing machines were built between 1937 and 1947. And as my guest might correct me in a second, I believe they were the only Allied fighter to be in continuous use and continuous development all the way through the Second World War. It's an absolutely iconic piece of kit here, and I'm just feeling incredibly lucky to be here. But I'm going to be joined now by Graham Rogers. You are in charge of visitor engagement here. Just tell us about this collection. It's absolutely amazing. How did it all come together? And this is pretty expensive, isn't it?
Yes, we're quite fortunate here. It is the only time around in the world at the moment that I know of anywhere where there is going to be 11 airworthy Spitfires in one space. I mean, in the conservation here area in the airspace building, it's about as large as a football pitch to have 11 airworthy Spitfires under one roof, and all with fantastic history, conservatively between 45-50 million pounds worth of aeroplanes, and we're quite excited about it, yes.
Well, I'm quite excited to be here too. It's every child's little dream, I think, to be here. I'm looking around and it's just amazing to be surrounded by this much history. But we're standing by one particular aircraft that's got quite an interesting history. It was buried and found under the sand, but just tell us more about this.
Yeah, we know all our Spitfires by the registration. This particular one is a Mark 1 Spitfire. There are 4 airworthy Mark 1 Spitfires in the world, and 3 of them here at Duxford. N3200 here, like I say, we know all our Spitfires by the registration, was shot down just before the evacuation of Dunkirk. Unfortunately came off second best to a Messerschmitt 109. The pilot escaped and evaded till he got to Brussels. The Spitfire was forgotten about, sank under the sand, discovered again in the 80s, brought back up. The wreckage was in Normandy for about 20 years in a museum, purchased by a wealthy gentleman called Mr. Kaplan, sent to Historic Flying Limited here at Duxford and restored back to its last nut and bolt here at Duxford for people to come and see again now.
Well, it's just beautiful, and this is a Mark 1 aircraft.
That's correct, yeah.
A Mark 1 aircraft was one of the first to be built, and then it ranged up to the Mark 24, where there are a few different adaptations. Just give us a very quick run through of the sort of history of the Spitfire.
Well, of course, obviously war's a terrible thing, but one thing it does bring is lightning quick development between the combatants involved, i.e. us and Germany. So trying to outdo and keep up with each other, the development of a Spitfire was very quick, as was the Messerschmitt 109. So through the war, we went through Mark 1s to Mark 21s as quick as, and we've got between those marks here today, we've Mark 1s, 5s, 8s, 9s, an 11, a very famous photo reconnaissance one, a couple of the most valuable Spitfires in the world. Here, a famous Mark 9 MH434 owned by Squadron Leader Ray Hanna of the Red Arrows, EP120 owned by the Fighter Collection, all with history and all with wartime heritage.
Well, thank you so much. And just very briefly, how long is this exhibition open for? It's not quite open today. We are the first channel to be here. When does it open until?
Right, we're open from the 27th. Families and visitors can come and see this fantastic collection from the 27th of December, and we will be open till the 20th of February.
Brilliant. Well, you can probably hear some of the planes. I can see them in the corner of my eye coming in and out. But look, it's just absolutely amazing to be here. I hope you enjoy this beautiful view behind me.
Well, Amelia, thank you so much. So, Amelia there, of course, at the Duxford Aerodrome and at the Duxford Imperial War Museum. And they've assembled the largest collection of Supermarine Spitfire aircraft under one roof. So incredible.
What would you say? Well, it's amazing that people, when you think about it, the amount of people who just went up in those and fought the Germans
Absolutely,
and whatever,
yeah.
it's incredible, isn't it, really? But anyway.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's finish off the hour on a festive note. Christmas, of course, is just days away, which means half the country will have all their festive shopping done. Well, probably optimistic.
Yeah.
Half of the country probably are going to scramble until the very last minute to get those Christmas gifts in. But let's learn about what the most highly sought after gadgets are this Christmas with our technology expert, Will Guyot. And he's here to help some people who might be doing some last minute shopping decide what gifts, what tech gifts in particular, are worthy of consideration. So Will, take it away. Let us know what we should be getting this Christmas.
Yeah, you've still got plenty of time to get tech gifts this Christmas. That's one of the best bits about it. You can order stuff up till Christmas Eve with many of the online and cloud-based services now. Things like the Xbox Game Pass, if you're an Xbox gamer, you can download those and get codes all through Christmas period. So you can still go and get things. Games consoles themselves, which have been a really big seller this Christmas, the companies are delivering them into stores up till Christmas Eve because there's been this big problem through the year. It started at the beginning of lockdown 18 months ago, where there's been a semiconductor shortage. This is the components that go into electrical devices. It could be in smartphones, it could be in games consoles, even in cars. So there's been a short supply. So if you're looking to try and buy a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox X console this Christmas, they've been in quite short supply. But when I spoke to the games companies last week, they were assuring that they're trying to get stock into all major retailers up into and including Christmas Eve, because they know it's a really important time of the year for them. And with the games consoles this year, there's some really good games to go with them too. So if you're going to buy a console, there's some fantastic titles out this Christmas. You've got Halo Infinite on the Xbox, you've got FIFA, you've got Call of Duty, you've got all of the favourites on the PlayStation. And the other great thing for gamers, if you're buying for a gamer, if they're an Xbox gamer, there's this thing now called the Xbox Game Pass. That's you can buy it as an annual subscription, or you can pay for it monthly. And that's essentially like using Blockbuster, if you remember the video stores. You can then go and download and choose games which are available on their store. Outside of that, if you're looking for something cheaper this year, one of the things that's going really well for people is tracker tags, location tags. I've got one there on my keys. That's an Apple AirTag. So if I lose my keys, I can make this thing make a little sound and make it easier to find, because as you can see, I've got a load of junk behind me. So it's actually easy for me to take this sort of technology. And that works really well with the Apple devices. And you also have a company called Tile as well. And those are around about the £15 to £20 mark, available in most electrical retailers and even in some of the supermarkets too.
Fantastic. I definitely need one of those on all of my personal possessions. As most people
brilliant.
Every single day I come into the office and, you know, I own relatively few possessions that I bring into work, one of which is my pass. Haven't seen that for months. One of them's a laptop charger. I've just nicked someone else's yesterday because I've lost mine. And you know, I'm a useless human being. Talk to me about phones, though. Talk to me about phones. Apparently, they're very in demand at the moment.
Yeah, the demand for phones doesn't typically go away. And if you're looking for something like an iPhone, the Apple iPhone this Christmas, they're still in fairly ready supply. And on the opposite side of that, you've actually got Google's new Pixel phone, the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. And they're both the sort of top-end type devices. One if you're used to Apple phones and Apple devices, and the other if you're more of an Android fan. And those are still widely available. Obviously, you can buy them with contracts, but the big secret about when you buy a phone with a contract, you actually end up paying more for it. I'm not suggesting everybody has 500 or 600 quid at a point to pay for a device, but it can actually work out cheaper over the 24-month contract, or as some mobile phone companies are now doing 36-month contracts. If you can afford that little bit of money up front, you can buy that device and save money over that period of time. I know we don't all have that situation. And also there's some great budget smartphones available this Christmas if you're looking for something in the sort of Android range. And those are phones from Chinese companies like Xiaomi, and you can get those for anything from about £130, £140 upwards. Motorola do some great stuff around the £200 mark. So there's always something you can get for a tech lover at Christmas. Another great thing to get if you're looking for something for someone who is a gadget lover is a USB charging block. The idea of a battery that you essentially charge up with the mains, and then when you're away from home, you can just plug your USB cable to it and get instant power for 3 or 4 charges to a mobile device. Those have saved my behind so many times over the years.
Top tips, Will. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a magnificent tech-filled Christmas. Will Garrett there, technology expert. We'll keep all of your thoughts coming into us, GB Views at GB News. We'll go to them, but first, time for a quick break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there. Well, a change is on the way for the weather across the UK over the next few days, starting today with some rain moving in from the west, potentially bringing some ice or snow to parts of Scotland. Still quite a cold feel for most of us as the cold air associated with this area of high pressure hangs on for one more day, but waiting in the wings are these weather fronts, and they'll be introducing milder air from the west and setting up a more changeable pattern into the Christmas period. So we've got rain coming in across parts of Wales, Northern Ireland, pushing up into Scotland, and as it encounters the cold air from what was a very cold night last night, chance for a few hours of freezing rain potentially across parts of southern and central Scotland, so an ice risk here for a time this afternoon. Elsewhere, though, the rain not amounting to much in the south, and it will be a cold day across eastern England as well as northern and eastern Scotland. A bit milder, though, for the far southwest. And then the rain continues to push its way further north through Wednesday evening. It's been quite a wet night across parts of Scotland, with potential for quite a bit of snow across the mountains north of the central belt. Ice risk continuing here. Elsewhere, though, rainfall not amounting to too much. Some clear spells for eastern England, and after a chilly start to the night, well, as we continue to feed in milder air, well, those temperatures will recover. So a very different start to Thursday morning compared to what we saw this morning. A lot of cloud around, perhaps some early brightness across eastern England. Otherwise, though, we're talking about a day of bands of rain coming in from the west, with some dry interludes mixed in between. The rain again across the south, not amounting to too much. The most prolific areas of rain will be parts of northern England, Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland. And again, for the mountains of Scotland, well, there could be quite a bit of snow. So still cold across the north, but a much milder day for the southwest. Temperatures here comfortably into double figures. And it stays quite wet across the north of the UK, particularly parts of Scotland, with some further rain and quite persistent hill snow for mountains north of the central belt, something just to bear in mind there. Elsewhere, though, some dry, clearer weather coming through later in the evening. It's a much more unsettled picture as we move through the Christmas period, with rain for most of us, potentially a bit of snow in the north where it stays cold, but on the whole milder further south. Take care.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Patrick Christie's and me, Mercy Morokin. We're here for another hour and we'll be discussing everything from COVID grants for hospitality, non-crime, hate crimes, and giving you a royal update as well.
Yes, well, make sure you get in touch with us with your views as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be reading those throughout the show. But first, it's time for your latest headlines.
I'm Rosie Wright. Good morning. This is your news at 11 o'clock. The self-isolation period for people who are fully vaccinated in England has been cut down from 10 days to 7. Those infected with the virus must produce a negative lateral flow result on day 6 and day 7 of their isolation period. The Health Secretary says the move will help thousands of people enjoy Christmas with their families. The Prime Minister says Christmas will go ahead as planned, but new measures could be brought in after. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary John Ashworth says businesses need clarity. In Wales, workers could be fined £60 for going to their office under new coronavirus laws. The Welsh Government has announced that unnecessarily attending a workplace is now a criminal offence. People in Wales are still allowed to visit pubs, restaurants, and there's no limit on household mixing. The Welsh Government is expected to give an update on potential further measures later today. Independent businesses have criticised the £1 billion support package announced by the Treasury, saying it will not be enough to help them through a difficult Christmas period. The Chancellor announced one-off grants of £6,000 for firms in the hospitality and leisure sector. Dave Mountford is the co-founder of the Forum of Pubs and a pub landlord. He told us many businesses might not survive the winter.
We have absolutely, in a space of 10 days, lost pretty much 50% of our trade. Voices aren't being heard, and we're not being listened to by government. We're not being represented correctly, and consequently we're getting... I've yet to meet or speak to anybody in the last sort of 12 hours who has welcomed this as being anything other than a real drop in the ocean.
The UK's chief medical officers have praised NHS staff for their essential and tireless work during the pandemic, but they're warning of tough winter months ahead. They're urging staff to prepare for multiple challenges as hospital admissions with the Omicron variant are rising very rapidly. The chief executive of King's College Hospital in London is also concerned at the number of COVID-related staff shortages.
We were at around about 100 or so COVID-related staff absences about 10, 11 days ago, and that figure is now over 600. Staff are coping, partly because they know they have to cope. They're professionals, they're clinical professionals, they're outstanding people, and they're doing what they have been trained to do, but it's difficult.
Israel will become the first country in the world to administer a fourth COVID-19 jab to the over 60s. It comes amid concern about the spread of the Omicron variant, with the first confirmed death in Israel this week. Although the decision is pending formal approval by senior health officials, the Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, already urged Israelis to get the dose as soon as possible. The UK economy has grown at a much slower pace than first thought between July and September. The Office for National Statistics said the economy expanded by 1.1% in the third quarter of this year, compared with an initial estimate of 1.3%. Experts expect the economy to further contract in December as there may be new COVID restrictions. Adverts by Arsenal Football Club that promote the sale of fan tokens have been banned for taking advantage of consumers' inexperience in crypto assets. It's a token scheme that would allow fans the chance to vote in decisions made at the club. The ads warned that consumers could lose some money and to seek financial advice. But the Advertising Standards Authority found Arsenal trivialised investment in crypto assets. The club said it would seek an independent review. A government minister in Madagascar has said he swam for 12 hours after his helicopter crashed at sea during a rescue mission. Sergei Gele, who leads the National Gendarmerie with a team searching the northeast coast of the country after a cargo ship allegedly carrying 138 passengers sank. At least 64 people have died, 24 people are missing, 50 survivors have been found. You are up to date. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Right now, though, back to the point.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christies, and we've got a final hour full of today's big stories and discussion on opinion on the things you care about. So here's what's on the menu.
Yes, well, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has granted £1 billion of grant support for the hospitality sector as rising COVID cases lead to massive dips in footfall. We'll be giving you an update of what this means for the 200,000 eligible businesses. And by the way, it's divided opinion in the inbox, this, so keep those views coming in.
Yes, and after a former police officer won his legal challenge against the police recording so-called non-crime hate incidents, campaigners are calling for records of over 100,000 of these cases to be deleted. We'll be speaking to one of those campaigners very shortly.
Yes, and as Christmas approaches, we're all trying our hardest to make it as normal as possible, and that's including the royal family as well. We'll be bringing you the very latest on the royals' Christmas plans.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well for the final hour. And get in touch, as we said, gbviews@gbnews.uk, because we'll be getting to those views very shortly. Now let's begin with just giving you the latest update on what Christmas might look like in terms of COVID restrictions across the whole of the UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced that there will be no new COVID restrictions in England before Christmas this year, but did not rule out the possibility of introducing them later.
Naturally, we can't rule out any further measures after Christmas, and we're going to keep a constant eye on the data. But in view of the continuing uncertainty about several things, severity of Omicron, uncertainty about the hospitalisation rate or the impact of the vaccine rollout and the boosters, we don't think today that there is enough evidence to justify any tougher measures before Christmas.
Absolutely. Thanks, Boris. Lovely wallpaper, by the way. Anyway, meanwhile, Scotland will implement tough new measures for social events and sports matches from Boxing Day, cancelling Hogmanay celebrations for the new year. Over in Wales today, First Minister Mark Drakeford will announce plans for COVID rules after Christmas. Also, we were having a chat about this, weren't we, Miss? So, as it stands in Wales, as far as we understand it, you can get fined for going to the office.
Yeah.
But if you moved your entire office to the pub, that would be okay.
That's exactly the rule. So they've announced you'll be fined for going to work unnecessarily. You can work from home, basically. But hospitality is all open, so that's fine. So.
And no limits on household.
And no limit on household mixing. So bring your entire workforce to your house or to the pub. That's perfectly fine. But God forbid you go to work.
Oh, no. So you could, technically, in Wales now, as far as I understand it, you could have your entire office round to your house, and then you could take them for a pub lunch, and then you could come back home again and carry on working. But the second you go into your office, you're a criminal.
Wow.
It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
just insane.
It doesn't make sense, and there's a serious point to all of this, which is that this is why people are kind of fed up of these COVID rules, because sometimes you sit down and think about how coherent they are, and there is no coherence to them whatsoever. And it just they keep saying we're following the science, we're following the science. Doesn't sound very epidemiologically sound to me for that policy, does it?
Epidemiologically.
Thank you. What's that word?
I can't remember now as well. But anyway, so moving on. Over in Stormont, ministers will meet later to consider new COVID restrictions in Northern Ireland.
Yes, so that is the update for the four nations of the UK. So there's a self-isolation issue as well, because people infected with COVID-19 in England can now stop self-isolating at 7 days. That's if they test negative twice. So there's a further update on that as well. And this is 3 days earlier than the previous 10-day mandate.
I thought we were going to watch that guy get it shoved right up his nose. Oh, we are. Good stuff. Anyway, right, Health Secretary Sajid Javid hopes this will minimise staffing disruption caused by the rapid spread of the Omicron variant and is based on the latest guidance from health officials. So I suppose that's good news in a way, really.
Yeah, it is good news. That is for people, I believe, who have had 2 jabs, though. So I don't know what the situation is for people who haven't been jabbed, although that's a minority, of course. But another thing that will be welcome to many, especially those in the hospitality sector, is the fact Chancellor Rishi Sunak has pledged £1 billion worth of business bailout for those hardest hit by the government's so-called stealth lockdown.
Yes, although the Prime Minister insisted there will be no new restrictions before Christmas, his previous urge for caution and reduced social mixing has cost many businesses valuable Christmas trade. So the Chancellor announced grants of up to £6,000 per premises for hospitality and tourist venues who've been left devastated after a wave of cancellations and no-shows due to COVID concerns. I think that's bang out of order, by the way. There's one thing cancelling, it's another thing just not turning up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely so. But also, I'm not sure the government is entirely to blame necessarily, because I suspect the reason many people are cancelling is because they don't want to. So it's nothing necessarily to do with what the government has said to them, but the fact that the reality is this Omicron is spreading. People don't want to catch it. They don't want to be isolating at Christmas, and so that's probably the reason underlying why they're cancelling.
Absolutely, yes, of course. Anyway, that new pot of funding for pubs is being described as a lifeline for landlords experiencing a huge drop in footfall ahead of Christmas. Alex Proud is a nightclub owner and he joins us now. Thank you very much, Alex. Look, I've got to be honest with you, £6,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money to me.
No, I mean we were open last night, and £6,000 probably didn't cover the loss I had last night alone. We've lost about 300,000 this month so far, and we had to order our champagne for New Year's Eve. yesterday. Otherwise, we would have missed our slot, and he won't even confirm if we're open for New Year's Eve. And I think that's where our frustration lies, to be honest. Excuse my French, but who cares about the government grants? Just tell us we can open, because I think you're right. There are some people who have cancelled on us because they're worried about COVID, perhaps a third of our customers. There's a third of our customers who have come out anyway. We had about 130 covers last night. But then there's a third of our customers who aren't coming because they're not sure what the government are doing, and they don't rightly trust Boris and the idiots in his cabinet. And that's our problem, is we've got about 180 covers booked for New Year's Eve. We'd normally be sold out by now. That is a big night for our industry. And Boris seems to think of it as an afterthought. Oh, as long as I've given everyone Christmas, then on the 28th I can make a decision. That's way too late for the industry. And the way he's treated us is just shocking. He's ruined December for an industry that was already on its knees, paying back debts from last time, because don't forget, the government didn't give us any money last time. And we're in real trouble now. And this is a sector of the economy that employs 3 million people. We don't want the government's money. We want certainty from the government. And if they are going to close us, tell us that we're not paying our business rates. They're going to reduce our VAT. Tell us we don't have to pay our rent, and help our staff. Give us clear messages.
And do you understand, of course, we don't, in the UK, we love hospitality, we love our pubs, and it's a tragedy that so many have gone under as a result of lockdown and the impact of COVID. But do you understand why now some people will be saying, OK, I was happy for the government to give all this money to hospitality and to all the other sectors, but actually we can't keep splashing taxpayers' money on helping businesses every single time there's a new variant. Do you understand that perspective as well?
Yes, and I have real sympathy for it. This country is essentially bankrupt, let's face it, with inflation about to rip through. Interest rates will go up, and we won't be able to afford the 300 billion quid's worth of debt we took. And let's try and remember that the thing that upsets me so much is that 300 billion might have saved, and it's arguable how many lives it saved, but 300 billion spent on the NHS might have saved a lot more lives. I think most of us are at a point where don't give us any money, just let us trade. Let the public decide whether they wish to go out or not. I do respect there are certain places that everyone has to go. Hospitals, supermarkets, yes, let's wear masks in those situations so that vulnerable people who have to go there feel safe. But it is a choice to go to hospitality. You can make it or not make it. Let the government allow us to make our own decisions. This is supposed to be a liberal democracy. We're supposed to be more aware of our individual rights in Britain. It's why we don't have ID cards, which you have in the continent. We have a tradition of being more libertarian. Where's that gone? It's gone out the window. And that's the bit that angers me. I don't want taxpayers' money. I want the right to trade. I want the public and my customers to decide whether I'm safe or not, because my customers know most of our venues are really safe. We're well ventilated. We test our staff every single day, whether they're at work or not. We're really safe venues, and anyway, it looks like Omicron isn't much more for the vast majority of people than a severe cold. Why are we all jumping up and down like headless chickens about this?
But isn't the reason a lot of people are cancelling or deciding not to go out is because they don't want to catch Omicron, regardless of the impact of Omicron, the virus itself, because they don't want to be forced to self-isolate in the event they do catch it. And there's not much the government can do to stop that, is there?
No, well, I think there's two sides to it. I think a lot of people are upset by the uncertainty of thinking there might be shutdown. People don't want to book if they think it's then going to be cancelled. It goes against their nature. The people who don't want to go out, I fully respect that. That's their decision. But all I want, and all our industry wants, is the government to allow people to make that decision. I think we'd also like a media that was more balanced. GBNews, Talk Radio are probably about the only two UK news outlets that present a balanced argument, like point out, yes, there were 90,000 infections yesterday, but the hospitalisation rate had only gone up by, 3 or 4%, which is quite normal at this time in winter. Let's not forget that the hospitalisation rate always goes up as December continues and January continues. That is a normal statistic. It is not abnormal. And why do we always present the worst statistic? Infection rates are 95,000. You know, there's probably 150,000 people that caught a bad cold yesterday. We don't normally report that. The point is, hospitalisation and death rates are fairly stable barely normal. And I don't think you should be crucifying an industry that employs 3 million people in a country that is essentially bankrupt with inflation about to come. I think someone needs to start seeing a bigger picture here. We don't have the luxury to be making these choices. Boris is acting like he's still got a whole load of money in his back pocket. This country is essentially bankrupt.
Yeah, it is. Alex, I promise you that when we're all out the other side of this, I will do my civic national duty and go to one of your venues and get absolutely sloshed. Alex Proud there, a nightclub owner who has just been talking us through the, well, essentially slow death of the hospitality industry, essentially, so keep it light. But anyway, that new pot of funding for pubs is, of course, being described as a lifeline by some, but others are saying, actually, it's not enough. Anyway, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us live from a pub in Nottinghamshire. Thank you very much, Will. Good to see you. So, look, what's going on where you are?
Good morning. Yes, from the national nightclub scene to the local village pub, you find one of these up and down the country in small villages, and you get the equivalents in your towns and your cities to it. It's got a really classic rustic feel here that you don't get in many places these days. I am, of course, at the Robin Hood Inn in Lamley, about 2 miles away from Nottingham. Earlier on, if you've been watching To The Point at home, you might have seen me with David Danby. He's the landlord for the Robin Hood Inn. There's certainly concern here, as there will be in many smaller pubs up and down the country. Certainly concern as to what might happen next. Although £6,000, up to £6,000 of eligible funding that the pubs and hospitality industry can apply to from the government grants, which come out through local authorities. Although that will go some way, the opinions and the concerns that I've been hearing are for this is the busiest time of the year. Christmas is the most profitable time for anybody working in the hospitality industry, particularly in the pub industry. It's a time that a lot of people make their big money that helps them go through the majority of the year. So there's certainly concern as to how big this hole will be and whether £6,000 will fill it. It's not just people in the smaller village pubs, though. The national body, the Beer and Pub Association, is really concerned about what this period might mean, and while they grant that the money will come in handy, long-term support is really what's needed. Just to give you a bit of an idea, 37 million fewer pints have been sold this Christmas, and that's only just so far. 297 million has been lost. 297 million pounds has been lost this Christmas, and in just one weekend alone, 3 million pub visits were cancelled. Now, as we've been talking about all day today, the announcement from Boris Johnson yesterday that he's not going to put any new lockdown restrictions in place before Christmas. It'd be a very tricky thing for him to do with just 3 days before the big day. But a lot of people are really concerned as to what might happen afterwards. There's certainly a lot of people that are thinking maybe we'll get through this next few days, but Christmas comes around and it ends quite quickly. And then when Boxing Day happens, a lot of people will certainly be thinking about what comes next. As I said, David Danby here, the landlord of the Robin Hood Inn, he's going to be looking on towards New Year, which is possibly one of his most profitable times of the year, and what might happen, and the concerns for maybe if there'll be any restrictions put in place at New Year's. But at this point, a lot of people, particularly this industry, are just happy to see some funding. But as one of our guests said earlier today on the Great British Breakfast, it may only just be a drop in the ocean for many pubs.
Indeed. Well, Will, thank you for bringing us that. And let's just hope the pubs do survive. I was quite staggered at those figures Will was citing there, the 9 million fewer pints, I think he said, and however many million cancellations there's been just in one weekend. Not a good
It brings
day
a
out,
tear
isn't it?
to the eye,
Yeah.
doesn't it, to think of that much beer going to waste. You know, people having to throw beer away. There's a real crisis out there, people, and it's that, I'm telling you. Anyway, right, well.
Yes, well, let's go to some of your views. We've spoken about quite a lot today. We started off with the stories about migration and the Coast Guard being sued by a French charity for the deaths of migrants in the Channel a couple of months ago. I think it was last month, actually. And we've been speaking, of course, a lot about those new announcements from the governments of the four nations, and, of course, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, yesterday.
Yes, indeed. Loads of you getting in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can see the email address there on your screen. There we go. I think Boris is planning a serious lockdown announcement next week. A very foolish move, seeing as hospitalisation is far below that of Jan 2020. And that is from Stephen. Yes, I'm not convinced the lockdown will... Well, it's obviously not going to be popular, is it? That's a stupid thing to say.
I think it's somewhat inevitable, though, at this point.
It's going that way, isn't
Yeah.
it? Well, it shouldn't be inevitable. I just think it's inevitable that it'll do it. But anyway, there we go. Hopefully I'm wrong. £6,000 to help the entertainment industry, hospitality as well, to be fair, not to be sniffed at. But a morsel compared to many hotels that have closed to the public and cancelled people's parties, etc., etc., etc. Loads of your views, of course, coming in. Are the Welsh Government making it law regarding fines for going to the office just to benefit themselves? That's from Graham. I don't know, but it does seem nuts. If you're just joining us, yes, apparently now the rules in Wales are you can't go to the office, but you can go to the pub and you can have people around to your house. So you could...
Not only can you not go to the office, but you'll be actually fined for going into work if you can work from home, which is just bizarre.
You could move your office to the pub and
and then that's fine. That's makes perfect scientific sense,
absolutely,
doesn't
we've
it?
got to follow the science. Anyway, after the break, campaigners have called for over 120,000 non-criminal hate incidents to be deleted from police records. We'll be talking about why that is and what it means for freedom of speech. But first, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there. Well, a change is on the way for the weather across the UK over the next few days, starting today with some rain moving in from the west, potentially bringing some ice or snow to parts of Scotland. Still quite a cold feel for most of us as the cold air associated with this area of high pressure hangs on for one more day, but waiting in the wings are these weather fronts, and they'll be introducing milder air from the west and setting up a more changeable pattern into the Christmas period. So we've got rain coming in across parts of Wales, Northern Ireland, pushing up into Scotland, and as it encounters the cold air from what was a very cold night last night, chance for a few hours of freezing rain potentially across parts of southern and central Scotland, so an ice risk here for a time this afternoon. Elsewhere, though, the rain not amounted to much in the south, and it will be a cold day across eastern England as well as northern and eastern Scotland. A bit milder, though, for the far southwest. And then the rain continues to push its way further north through Wednesday evening. It's been quite a wet night across parts of Scotland, with potential for quite a bit of snow across the mountains north of the central belt. Ice risk continuing here. Elsewhere, though, rainfall not amounting to too much. Some clear spells for eastern England, and after a chilly start to the night, as we continue to feed in milder air, those temperatures will recover. So a very different start to Thursday morning compared to what we saw this morning. A lot of cloud around, perhaps some early brightness across eastern England. Otherwise, though, we're talking about a day of bands of rain coming in from the west, with some dry interludes mixed in between. The rain again across the south, not amounting to too much. The most prolific areas of rain will be parts of northern England, Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland. And again, for the mountains of Scotland, there could be quite a bit of snow. So still cold across the north, but a much milder day for the southwest. Temperatures here comfortably into double figures. And it stays quite wet across the north of the UK, particularly parts of Scotland, with some further rain and quite persistent hill snow for mountains north of the central belt, something just to bear in mind there. Elsewhere, though, some dry, clearer weather coming through later in the evening. And it's a much more unsettled picture as we move through the Christmas period, with rain for most of us, potentially a bit of snow in the north where it stays cold, but on the whole milder further south. Take care.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Good morning. Well, yesterday we spoke with a former police officer, Harry Miller, who won a Court of Appeal challenge against official police guidance on hate incidents, in particular non-crime hate incidents. Mr. Miller launched the legal bid after he was threatened and challenged by the police after a series of tweets. Well, do make sure you watch our interview with him if you missed it. He was a very passionate man, I found, very good to talk to. But campaigners are now calling for the 120,000 of these non-crime hate incidents to be deleted from police records, citing concerns over freedom of speech. And I think it is worth saying that actually the Court of Appeal, the judges in this case, they said that it went against his human rights and it was creating a chilling effect on freedom of speech, basically. So recording, having these non-crime hate incidents logged against your name for expressing views people disagree with is sort of damaging freedom of speech.
Yeah, essentially what happens is the police come around, knock on your door and they check your thinking. But for more on this, free speech campaigner and political commentator Emma Webb joins us now. Emma, thank you very much for being on the show. Well, look, do you think that we should, I can guess your answer to this, but do you think we should overturn these 120,000 convictions or whatever they're called, these non-crime, hate crime thingies? Oh, you're on mute, Emma. And here she is. Oh, no.
No.
Oh,
well,
disaster.
We'll come,
You've been
we'll come
silenced.
Back to,
it's a campaign against free speech. That's what this is.
Very cynical. But it's worth explaining, in the meantime, whilst we're getting Emma back, it's worth explaining what non-crime... See, it's so
nuts,
absurd,
isn't it?
you can barely remember what it's called. Non-crime hate incidents. So there's hate crimes, which by definition are obviously crimes, and what has to happen for a hate crime to take place? Somebody has to perceive that your actions towards them are as a result of their characteristics, so as a result of them being of an ethnic minority or religious or gender identity, and then that's the crime. Non-crime hate incidents are sort of lower than that. They don't qualify as crimes necessarily, and these are often speech and things that have taken place online rather than sort of in person. They don't qualify as crimes, but it's still the same thing. Somebody has to perceive that you've said something to them that discriminates against a minority or religious group or a gender identity or somebody with a disability. All that has to happen is they perceive that you've done that. There has to be no intent, no proof that you've actually discriminated against that person. And then the police log these things against your crime record, basically.
Yes, exactly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we can welcome Emma Webb back into the fray. Emma, Are you there?
I'm back.
Yay! Huzzah! Right, yes, well, time for some free speech then, isn't it? What do you make of these, the idea that we should overturn all of these charges?
I think absolutely we should. I think it would be mad not to. Given the fact that it's quite clear that the court has said that this was an interference, an unlawful interference with Harry Miller's right to freedom of speech. It was an interference under Article 10 of the European Convention of Human Rights with his human rights, his right to freedom of expression. And as Mercy already said, constituted a likely chilling effect on free speech within the public debate on a very important matter. In the case of Harry Miller, this was to do with his expression of gender critical views, or particularly on Twitter, with his sharing of some jokes and liking some jokes that were ostensibly gender critical. So I think it's extremely important that if the court has found that this was an unlawful interference in his speech, it's found that the guidance that was issued by the College of Policing, which is an unelected, unaccountable quango. This isn't any guidance that was voted on in Parliament. This was drawn up in 2014 by the College of Policing. They found that guidance resulted in an unlawful interference in his free speech. The 120 or more than 120,000 people who have these non-crime hate incidents, the Orwellian named non-crime crimes, that are logged against their names and can affect their job prospects. They can show up in an advanced DBS check. Of course, these things should be immediately scratched from their records. I think it seems nonsensical to me that should be the case.
Yes, indeed. And it's not just about speech, is it? It's almost freedom of thought as well, I think. Because the police, essentially, as Harry said yesterday, they basically knocked on his door and wanted to check his thinking.
They actually turned up to his workplace, I believe.
Oh, yes, yeah. Which is a bit nuts. But it's not just expression, is it? It's thought as well, Emma.
Absolutely. And, the rights under international law, human rights, they're connected to each other. And Harry's right to freedom of conscience, as well as his right to freedom of speech, has obviously been interfered with by this. In my opinion, that isn't from the court ruling. But it's quite clear that, if the court has found that this was an interference in his right to freedom of speech, if this, clearly was an unlawful interference on the part of the police officer who did come around and tell him that he had to check his thinking, then it seems obvious that people like, for example, Darren Grimes, who had a non-crime hate incident recorded against his record because of an interview that he did with David Starkey, where David Starkey said something that was investigated by the police. There are many thousands of people around the country who have these things logged against their names. And of course, this is going to interfere with in matters of important public debate. And that obviously has an impact for people's freedom of conscience.
Indeed. Well, Emma Webb, thank you for joining us this morning. Obviously, this is quite the victory for free speech.
Absolutely.
So there are some wins occasionally in this free speech conversation, isn't there? But for now, we're just going to give you the news and we'll be back very shortly.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Here are the latest headlines. The self-isolation period for people who test positive for COVID-19 and who are fully vaccinated in England, it's been cut down from 10 days to 7. Those infected with the virus must produce a negative lateral flow result on day 6 and day 7 of their isolation period. The Health Secretary says the move will help thousands enjoy Christmas with their families. In Wales, new coronavirus laws mean going into the workplace unnecessarily will be a criminal offence and employees could be fined £60. People in Wales are still allowed to visit pubs and restaurants, and there's no limit, though, on household mixing. The Welsh Government is expected to brief the public later on today on any further potential measures. The UK economy has grown at a much slower pace than first thought between July and September. The Office for National Statistics said the economy expanded by 1.1% in the third quarter of this year, compared with an initial estimate of 1.3%. Experts expect the economy to further contract in December as new restrictions could be introduced. A government minister in Madagascar has said he swam for 12 hours after his helicopter crashed at sea during a rescue mission. Sergei Gele, who leads the National Gendarmerie, was with a team searching the northeast coast of the country after a cargo ship illegally carrying 138 passengers sank. At least 64 people have been killed, 24 are missing. 50 survivors were found. You are right up to date. I'll have more for you at 12 o'clock.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Right, morning everybody, thank you very much for tuning in, and we're going to go to you now, gbviews at gbnews.uk. The views have been flying in thick and fast, fantastic stuff. Someone has, I can't see, oh there we go, Jimmy. So now in Wales, this is obviously their new restrictions. You get fined if you go to the office, but you're allowed to go to the pub and have people around to your house. So now in Wales, you have to make a business meeting look like a party to avoid being fined. What a crazy world.
Well, that's what the government have been doing anyway, so maybe they're just letting people do the same thing.
Exactly.
Equality.
Fantastic. Yes, well, there you go. Equality under the law. Yes, and lots of you, of course, getting in touch about what's been going on in the channel. If you've just tuned in, the Coast Guard, essentially, specifically the top brass, is being... well, essentially, someone's issued a lawsuit against them for manslaughter after the deaths of 27 migrants in the Channel. People are saying this might backfire. I'm just going to get this email up now. Yes, might the lawsuit backfire, because it would mean that essentially the Coast Guard would just become a migrant taxi service, and that's essentially what I was saying before as well. Actually, I do think that it will. They'll be so terrified, of course, won't they, of being done for manslaughter, that essentially I worry now that essentially they'll just feel like they've got one job.
I do think there is... I mean, I'm not criticising the idea of holding somebody responsible if people die, because there might be cases in the future, could have happened already before, where people aren't helped when they're in danger properly, and then, OK, there should always be recourse to the law. But I think in this particular case, from the details I've seen so far, from what the two surviving individuals who were on this boat that capsized and killed 27 people, what they're saying and then what the Coast Guard is saying from here, it does seem like the case won't have much, the case shouldn't really last very long, let's put it that way. So who knows? But hey, we live in a civil society, and you can sue whoever you like, I suppose.
Well, I suppose you can, but I mean, look, I think it's an absolute scandal. I've been deeply critical of some of the ways, in my opinion anyway, that some of the Coast Guard and Border Force, etc., the RNLI have at times behaved, and I stand by that. But at the same time, we have to stand up for them when, I think, a collection of idiots decide that they want to try and take them to court for manslaughter when they've got absolutely no part to play in this thing. And, as well, we have to remember, as indeed this charity that's bringing the case would do well to remember, the only reason that people get in boats and go out into the Channel is because they know the Coast Guard and the Border Force will pick them up. So, unfortunately, in this particular case, the boat sank. And they couldn't get to them in time. And that's a massive, massive shame. But the fact is, you know, the only reason they're doing that in the first place is because our Coast Guard is so favourable towards these people. So I think we can't lose sight of that, can we?
Well, let's move on to that top story of the day, really. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that there will be no new restrictions introduced before Christmas, but he did not rule out the possibility of further restrictions down the road. But Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting said that sooner rather than later restrictions would be better to protect the NHS, condemning the government's concern for a Tory rebellion and party politics over the health of its public.
Well, Labour previously backed the Prime Minister's vaccine passport rules for England when 99 of his own MPs opposed them. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer vowed that his party would support future restrictions. Of course they would, as they did what was in the national interest, according to them. Earlier, Jonathan Ashworth, the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, spoke to the Great British Breakfast, and Simon and Rosie began by asking him about the announcement from the Prime Minister that there will be no further restrictions before Christmas.
Boris Johnson, if he was going to have introduced anything over Christmas, he missed his window of opportunity because he sort of divvied and delayed. So, as it happens, I think because the British people have been sensible and they are showing leadership themselves, it does look like the infection rates have plateaued over the last couple of days. It's still a high level infection, of course. Let's watch those infection rates like a hawk. I think the issue now, though, is that everybody is anticipating that something will happen after Christmas. Indeed, that's the briefing from the government sources to newspapers. Briefings to newspapers isn't good enough. I think businesses who need to order stock for post-Christmas in the run-up to New Year's Eve need clarity. We all need to know where we stand. So we'll urge Boris Johnson to outline what he anticipates comes next. We'd all understand it if he says we think we need to do X, Y, and Z, and then when we get after Christmas, he says, actually, it doesn't look like it's needed after all. But I think people just need a sense of direction. Instead, we get more sort of dither and delay from the Prime Minister. I think people just need to know where they stand. I mean, we're in the worst of all worlds at the moment, that we know that we've got a Christmas, we don't have restrictions, but businesses don't know where they stand post-Christmas. And of course, a lot of businesses in the hospitality sector, restaurants, bars, have taken a real hammering this week or so because people have restricted their interactions. The financial package that was announced isn't going to go far enough to support a lot of businesses, and it's certainly not going to support those workers who are going to lose hours, who if they're on 0 hours contracts or their hours are cut back, they're going to lose wages. And I think we just need some clarity about what the financial package will be and what the restrictions are likely to look like post-Christmas in the run-up to New Year's Eve. We can't leave people in limbo. We just need that certainty from the Prime Minister today. A map, if you like. And remember, when we came into winter, before we knew about this variant, we had the Plan A and the Plan B map. And the government said, look, if things get worse, we can move to Plan B. And this is what Plan B looks like, masks on in shops and so on. So that principle of setting out options for the next stage, so people know what the next stage looks like, is one that has been established by the government. And we're just asking the government to give people certainty about what the next stage could be. And at the moment, though, I take the point you are making, but look at the newspapers. There's all kinds of briefings from government insiders and sources in government saying, well, we've saved Christmas, but New Year's Eve is going to be stuffed. That's not good enough. That's not fair to pubs and restaurants and theatres and so on in my constituency here in Leicester and across the country. People who have struggled this year trying to make ends meet. Christmas and the New Year period is really, really important for pubs and restaurants, and they're going to take a hit. They need a bit of a sense of where they think things are going to be post-Christmas, and that's what we're calling for.
Well, John Ashworth there, of course, the Shadow Health Secretary. Interesting stuff. I mean, Labour...
No longer the Shadow Health Secretary.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
West Street.
Sorry, John.
Well, his brief isn't that bad. Work and Pensions Secretary.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, right, moving away. Now, the ruler of Dubai has been ordered to pay around £550 million to his former wife and their 2 children in Britain's biggest ever divorce settlement.
Yes, the High Court have ruled that Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum will now have to pay a lump sum of £251.5 million to his 6th wife, Princess Haya. She fled the United Arab Emirates for England in 2009, claiming she was terrified of her husband after she discovered he'd previously abducted 2 of his other daughters and taken them back to Dubai against his will.
Yeah, sounds like a nice chap, doesn't he? Anyway, let's talk this through with Vanessa Lloyd-Platt, who is, of course, a celebrity lawyer. Thank you very much. I mean, there's a massive, massive settlement. There's a massive payment, I suppose, isn't it? Just talk us through your views on it, really.
Well, this is one of the biggest settlements that we've ever seen in Britain. One of the difficulties with these huge settlements, and Mrs. Akhmedov had the same sort of problems in forcing her £450 million settlement, is that it's all very well getting these large amounts, but how do you enforce it through the British courts? Now, one of the reasons why she got such a large settlement is part of it is the house that she owns, which is worth about 100 million. But what she claimed in her case, although she was slightly disappointed because she'd wanted 1.5 billion, she only ended up with 554 million. But the reason for this was there's going to be £11 million a year for children's maintenance. The lump sum is supposed to go towards her security for protecting her against kidnapping, mainly from her husband. That was the allegation. Also, she claimed that because she had to flee from the country so quickly, she left about £20 million worth of jewellery there and other assets and clothes, and that she had to be compensated for that. In her case, she claimed that she needed about £63 million a year for clothing. Now, I think I could have got by on slightly less than that, but these are people who had a lifestyle that's beyond a lot of people's comprehension. They would fly around in private jets. They had multiple homes, at least 15 luxury homes around the world. They went in the yacht that he owned, and the expenditure that they had would make people really blush. So she reckoned that just to run her home would cost her about £900,000 a year. It was suggested in the allegations made that they bought strawberries for the family that cost them about £1 million a year. Well, these are things that most people would not understand in terms of expenditure. But when you're dealing with these very, very high-profile cases, they have expenses that are beyond belief.
Oh, I mean, the whole thing is absolutely astonishing from start to finish, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, he sums it up as well. He's saying, there's quite a lot of this is going to have to go on protection against kidnap for the rest of her life. And I think that just about sums it all up. Well,
that's the point. And it also was part of it, the maintenance for the children was their education. So their education cost about £3 million a year. But one of the extraordinary parts about this was her needs. And she had a clean break of this lump sum you mentioned, about 291 million. But I think what was extraordinary was how she got to the figures that she got to, that most people wouldn't understand at all. But what she spent on jewellery, she said her jewellery collection would have filled the entirety of the courtroom. And I don't think most of us can make that claim. But it certainly is one of those that's very interesting to watch, because will he actually pay out the money? There were certainly very serious allegations that were made during the case that he had purportedly hacked into her phones and the phone of her lawyer, and also that there was constant threat to her of kidnap, abduction, and all of these made it very difficult for the court in England to assess the correct level of what she needed. But they were very interested in the courtroom at the need for security. And she certainly produced evidence to show that other daughters from previous marriage or other marriages that he has were abducted, and that there was a very real risk of this happening in this case. And very unusually, Justice Moore did take that into account and said, this has to be factored into this settlement. It can't be left.
Absolutely. Vanessa, thank you very much. Expertly whizzed us through what is a very complex case indeed. Vanessa Lloyd-Platt there, celebrity lawyer, good stuff. Yeah, monumental payout, right?
There's a provision for a budget, holiday, salaries, accommodation for nanny, nurse and nanny, armoured vehicles for the family, the cost of maintaining various ponies and pets. That's included in this divorce settlement.
Sounds like my ex. Anyway. Right, OK. The Queen is to celebrate Christmas at Windsor Castle, breaking with the tradition of spending festivities at Sandringham in Norfolk for a second year. Sources said that the decision was a personal one, taken after careful consideration, and that it reflected her precautionary approach during the pandemic.
Yes, the 95-year-old monarch is not expected to be alone. However, family members are said to be planning to visit her on Christmas Day.
Well, Ingrid Stewart is a royal expert and biographer and joins us now. Thank you very much, Ingrid. Great to have you on the show, as always. Will the Queen be upset about this? A second break with tradition? She's just playing it safe, is she?
Well, I think she will be upset because she was really looking forward to being at Sandringham with the extended family. And also Sandringham where it was her father's favourite place, and it's where he died 70 years ago in February. And they have spent Christmases at Sandringham for, since the 80s. So she is sad, but she's also very, practical, the Queen. I mean, she knows that if she has the extended family there, it's very, very possible with this new variant that someone will, have COVID or get COVID, and she wants to protect her family as well as herself. So, and also she has to really go by government guidelines.
Yeah. How is the Queen? Obviously, there was some slight health fears earlier on in the year, weren't there? Is she in fine fettle?
Well, I wish I could just say I just been to see her and she's fine. But I think, she's got, at the age of 95, she has to be frail. I mean, she looks a lot frailer. For instance, in this photograph, she looks frailer than she did, 4 months ago. So she's, but I think she's just determined to carry on. And also she's got a very big year coming up, her Platinum Jubilee year. And she doesn't want to let people down. And I think she feels, well, I'll have some of my family at Christmas, but if I can't have them all, so be it.
OK.
And that is her approach. And I suppose that's the approach we all have to have.
And I'm assuming she will still be doing a Christmas message, a Christmas address to the nation. What do you think? It's been another difficult year, hasn't it, 2021? Sadly, it's echoed a lot of what we went through in 2020. What do you think the nation wants to hear her say this year to reassure them about the year coming up?
Well, I think it's got to be very upbeat. Her message always has a strong religious feel to it. It is the message of Christmas. And that goes through all her Christmas speeches for the last, 70 years, which she will have been doing them for. The first one she did was in 1952. So that message goes through all of them. But she very, very seldom talks about anything personal. She'll say her personal feelings, but she won't refer to her personal life. So I don't think we're going to hear her say, how sad she is about, the Duke of York, or how sad she is that Meghan and Harry aren't there. I think it will be very much, as it always is, a message to the Commonwealth and a message to her subjects. And she will tell people to be strong and keep going and, to keep cheerful, I think.
Thank you very, very much, as always. Fantastic stuff. And I hope you have a very, very happy Christmas as well. It was all the best
you.
You and yours, of course. Yes, fantastic stuff, Ingrid Stewart, there, royal expert and indeed commentator. So that's the news, of course, that the Queen will be remaining in residence in Windsor. She won't be going to Sandringham. Have you ever been to Sandringham? You ever seen it?
No.
I've seen it from the outside. They don't let commas in, to be fair. But,
yeah. I would be surprised if you had randomly dropped on me that you're pals with the royal family, to be honest.
No, I'm not yet. Anyway, right, OK, so a couple of your views to finish the show. The final word to you, the lovely people at home. This is in relation to the massive divorce settlement that we were just speaking about there. Of course he won't pay. If the UK government upsets him, he'll must remove all of his assets. That's from Philip, yes, absolutely. Hate speech as well. We did a big piece on that earlier on about these hate crime.
Non-crime hate incidents.
Well, anyway, people saying it's a perversion, it's Orwellian, it's a disgusting perversion of police powers, which is a curious attempt to destroy freedom of speech and thought. That's from Leslie. Well, Leslie, there's no perversion of your freedom of thought and speech here because we just read your email out. So thank you very much, everyone who's been getting in touch throughout the show. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yes, and that is it from us here at The Point for today. But don't go away because up next is the briefing with Tom Harwood. So stick around for that. And coming up right now is the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there. Well, a change is on the way for the weather across the UK over the next few days. Starting today with some rain moving in from the west, potentially bringing some ice or snow to parts of Scotland. Still quite a cold feel for most of us as the cold air associated with this area of high pressure hangs on for one more day, but waiting in the wings are these weather fronts, and they'll be introducing milder air from the west and setting up a more changeable pattern into the Christmas period. So we've got rain coming in across parts of Wales, Northern Ireland, pushing up into Scotland, and as it encounters the cold air from what was a very cold night last night, chance for a few hours of freezing rain potentially across parts of southern and central Scotland, so an ice risk here for a time this afternoon.